What I'm about to tell you took me 2 years to understand, not to survive. It starts with a knock on my door I almost didn't answer. It ends somewhere I still think about every single day. My father stopped my Google interview to ask me to babysit my brother's kids, and I will never forget my own voice when I said no. I am Emily, 29, a product manager from Seattle, and this is my story. The call had barely started when I heard banging on my door. I muted myself and opened it. My father, Robert, stood there like it was an emergency. Daniel's sitter canceled last minute and he called me instead of you. I need you to watch the kids. I told him I was mid-interview. He looked past me at my laptop like it was a toy. Google will still be there tomorrow. This family needed you an hour ago. I said I wasn't leaving the call and I wasn't going to explain myself twice. He shook his head, already turning to go. You always find a reason it's not you. I closed the door on him, sat back down, and finished the interview with my hands still shaking the entire time. I didn't hang up on anyone. I just went back to the call and let him stand there without me, and I still don't know if that was the bravest or worst thing I've ever done. My chest was tight for an hour after he left. My mother, Linda, called twice and I didn't answer. I sat with my cold coffee, the one I always make and never drink, and I thought about every time this had happened before, smaller, quieter, easier to excuse. The science fair he skipped because Daniel needed a ride, the internship he called a phase. I used to think I was just unlucky with timing. Now I wasn't sure. My phone buzzed. It was Dad. You embarrassed me in front of the kids. I stared at the message before typing back. You interrupted the biggest interview of my career. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally. This is exactly why nobody can rely on you. He didn't send anything after that. That silence said more than anything he could have typed. I kept replaying his face at my door, not worried, not apologetic. Just certain that I would say yes the way I always had. And the thing is, I almost did. My hand was already reaching for my coat before I stopped myself. That scared me more than the interview ever could. Sunday dinner was Mom's idea, a peace offering I didn't ask for, the usual extended family gathering she always turned it into. My older brother, Daniel, was already at the table with his wife, my sister-in-law, Priya, and the kids running around the kitchen, along with an aunt and a cousin Mom had roped in. Dad acted like nothing happened. There she is, he said, like I was the one who'd been missing. I didn't say anything. Then Priya asked how the interview went, and before I could answer, Dad cut in. She's always been the dramatic one. Ask her mother, she'll tell you. A few relatives laughed. Mom stared at her plate and said nothing. I felt my face go hot. Daniel avoided my eyes, not because he agreed with Dad, but because conflict had never once gone well for him in this house. I put my fork down. I'm still waiting to hear back, actually. Second round if I get it. Dad smiled at the table, not at me. Good for you, must be nice having time for that. 6 words that should have felt like nothing landed like a slap across the whole table. The callback email came Tuesday morning. Round 2, technical interview next Thursday. I read it 4 times before I let myself believe it. I called my closest friend, Jade, first, not my parents, because I already knew which reaction I actually wanted to hear. She screamed into the phone loud enough that I had to hold it away from my ear. Then, against my better judgment, I called Dad. I made it to round 2, I said. There was a pause. That's cute, Em. Real world's a little different, though. Don't get too attached to it. My stomach dropped. I didn't argue. I just said okay and hung up, and this time I didn't shake. I felt strangely calm, like something in me had finally stopped waiting for his approval. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how he never once asked what the job actually was. Not the title, not the team, not what it would mean for me. Just cute. I said it out loud to my empty apartment, testing how small it sounded away from him. It sounded exactly as small as it was. Mom showed up at my door Thursday evening, alone, which never happened. She sat at my small kitchen table, the one with a chip in the corner I never fixed, and didn't say anything for a while. Then, quietly, I had a job offer once. Before you were born, before your father and I had any kids at all. I put my tea down. What happened? She traced the chip in the table. He just started his own career and said he couldn't handle both of us building something new at once. So I was the one who stopped. I asked why she never told me. She looked up, and for the first time I saw something in her face I didn't have a name for yet, because saying it out loud makes it real, and I wasn't ready for that. I reached across the table and held her hand, and neither of us said anything else for a long time. If you've ever watched someone you love realize something 30 years too late, you already know that once she started talking, I couldn't leave that table for anything. Mom kept talking after that, slower now, like she was unlocking a door she'd sealed shut for decades. It was a teaching position, small college outside the city. Your father said we couldn't both be starting something new at the same time, that one of us had to be steady. I felt something cold move through me. So it was never really about a baby or about Daniel. She shook her head. It's never really about the reason he gives you. It's about him needing to feel like the one everyone depends on. I thought about the interview, the banging on my door, the laptop comment. It wasn't protectiveness, it was a pattern with my name on it this time instead of hers. Why didn't you ever say something? She smiled, but it wasn't happy. I did, once. He told me I was being selfish for wanting something outside this house, and I believed him for 30 years. I didn't sleep that night either, but for a different reason. I finally understood exactly what I had been looking at my whole life. I found the photo by accident, going through Mom's old boxes while helping her clean out the hallway closet. It was a farewell picture from her old department, her old boss, Mr. Callahan, standing beside her, signed on the back. The department won't be the same, come back anytime. Folded underneath it was a packing list in her own handwriting, dated that same week, for a suitcase she never actually used. I held the photo up. You were really leaving? She nodded once, quiet. For 3 days I was. I didn't ask what happened on the 4th day. I already knew, and asking would have made her say it out loud twice in 1 week. Keep it if you want, she said, and I did. A photo and a packing list, side by side, 30 years old and never resolved in any way that mattered. That was the whole story, really the exact shape of everything he'd built his piece on top of. 5 words for what I saw that day, her suitcase still packed, waiting. I asked Dad to meet me for coffee, just the two of us. He looked pleased, like I'd finally come around. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't bring the photo. I just asked, did you tell Mom she was being selfish for wanting a job before I was born? His face changed slowly, like he was recalculating something. That's ancient history, Emily. Why are you digging it up now? Because you're still doing it. You told me my laptop could wait. You told her a teaching job could wait. It's the same sentence 30 years apart, just with a different name on it. He shook his head. You don't understand everything your mother sacrificed for this family, for you. No, I said, calm as I'd ever been. I understand exactly what she sacrificed. I just don't think it was ever hers to give. He set his cup down harder than he meant to and didn't answer right away. For the first time in my life, my father sat there with nothing ready to say back, and the silence between us felt like something finally starting to settle instead of something to fear. 2 weeks passed before he called again. When he did, his voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. Your mother's signing up for a class, some writing thing at the community college. I asked if he was going to stop her, and I braced myself for the answer, because a small part of me still expected the old version of him. He was quiet for a long time. I wanted to tell her not to go, he said. I had the words ready in the car, then I heard myself say them in my head, and I stopped. I didn't say I forgive you because I wasn't there yet, and I wasn't going to pretend for his comfort just to make the call easier for him. But I said, that's a start, Dad. It was small, quiet, unphotographed, no big apology, no dramatic scene, no audience for it at all. Just an old man catching himself mid-sentence for the first time in 30 years and choosing to stop instead of finishing what he'd always finished before. Accountability doesn't always look like an apology. Sometimes it looks like a sentence somebody almost said and didn't. After the final interviews, 3 weeks later, Google called. I got the job. I called Mom first and she cried in a way I'd never heard before, happy, unguarded hers. She enrolled in that writing class the same week. My father offered to drive her there. She let him. He waited in the parking lot and didn't say a single word about how long it took. Nothing was undone. My mother still lost 30 years she can't get back. But she has this now, and so do I, and that has to be enough because it's what's real. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that the people who ask you to shrink usually aren't asking for help, they're asking for control, dressed up as family. If this story stayed with you, if you've ever watched someone you love finally choose themselves, I'd love it if you liked this video, subscribed so you don't miss the next one, and told me in the comments, has someone ever made you feel invisible in your own story? My father stopped my interview to babysit. My mother finally stopped waiting for permission, and I finally stopped opening the door every time he expected me to drop everything for him.